Hello. So I just put out a juggling video, and I'm always really interested in what people have to say about their juggling and the thought process that went behind it. So I thought I would just add some commentary to my video, be the change you want to see in the world or something like that. So yeah, I'll just kind of talk about the thought process behind a lot of the tricks, especially because I think, if anything, my strong suit is sort of like coming up with tricks, and so I don't know, seeing where the inspiration comes from for a certain trick or something might be interesting to someone. Yeah, so before I do that, I'll spend 30 seconds explaining what the title of my video means. So it's titled Tanghulu, which is a Chinese snack, especially popular in Beijing. And part of the reason I called my video that is because I currently live in Beijing. That's where the video was filmed. So that's one reason. And the other is that it looks like this. So maybe you can see where the aesthetic similarities are, a bunch of red balls in a line. Yeah, so especially the small one, 3, I found a nice screen grab from the video, which hopefully, you can kind of see why this came to mind. Yeah, on to the video. So let's go. So it's my living room. So in my mind, the first trick is sort of that kick up, which is something, this sort of cross-leg kick up is something you see with clubs, but at least I don't remember ever seeing it with balls before. And I think the reason might be it's like a little tricky, like as you pull your foot up for the kick up, you kind of have to rotate it, and so the ball usually just slides off your foot. So you need to, as you lift your foot up, you take advantage of the fact that you can move your big toe independent of your other toes and sort of move it so it has a platform to stay on. So that's the first part of this, and there were a couple sort of other tricks I filmed around this idea, which didn't end up making it into the final cut, but I can show them now. So the first is just this sort of using this as a kick up to go from 3 balls to 4 balls to 5 balls. And the other one is just kicking up, catching it behind the head, which is harder than it looks to sort of kick up using that method and get them high in there, at least for me. Definitely an interesting idea, but I guess those tricks just weren't quite my favorites. Not enough to make it into the video. So next I do what's sort of a fairly standard 7-ball multiplex pattern, but I tried to do something a little interesting with it, which was sort of, instead of just throwing the multiplex regularly, to throw them sort of in this wall plane. So you can see, my hand's in a different position to throw these than they normally would be. And when you do that, especially if you sort of give your wrist a flick as you throw it, you get a lot of nice separation on the juggling balls in a different way than you would if you threw it normally. So normally they would kind of all go up and maybe spread a little bit, but when you do it this way, it really gets a nice sort of triangle shape. The effect is a little more subtle with this trick, where there's just, you have to do them fast, so you can't maybe get it quite as clean, and especially with the lower ceilings. It's a little subtle here, but later on there will be a trick that uses the same wrist flick thing, where it's, I think, more obvious why it's different from the normal way to throw it. But yeah, so you can see each of those is thrown in that wall plane. Yeah, here's a nice trick that I originally wanted to do alternating, but I just wasn't very good at it. So I have a clip of my best attempt at the alternating version here. Yeah, so just felt like it wasn't quite as clean as it could be, especially for me, sort of on the left side, getting those two throws at the same time to go where I want them to is a little hard. So I sort of, while filming, decided to try a one-sided version, which I'd never done before, but tried it, filmed it, looked at it, and thought it looked even better. So there we go. Especially one tricky thing about the alternating trick is your hands have to move pretty fast, because you have to go from catching behind your neck to throwing the other way around your neck, like right away. So it's a little tricky, but you don't have to worry about that with this version, although you sort of have to figure out where you need to look, like the behind the neck throw is you don't get as good of a look at that as you might want, because you have to watch the other balls. So I don't know. I guess they're both sort of difficult in their own way, at least again for me, but pretty self-explanatory. I don't know. Trying out a bunch of different elbow stalls and then transitioning between them. Yeah, and then so trick after this one is what I was talking about before. So here I start with this wrist flick multiplex thing. From this example, maybe you can kind of see a little better the sort of separation you get. Here, maybe I can slow-mo it. So yeah, we get this nice big equilateral triangle all from one throw, which I don't think you can really do with a normal throw. So yeah, I don't know, fun little technique that I've never seen anyone do. It seems like someone must have though, but maybe someone does it, just I don't know about it. But there it is. From here, oh yeah, just a nice little roll thing. Yeah, so this is a trick that I think is a little outside of my usual style, but that's something I kind of wanted to mess around with. So I feel like usually my tricks end up with sort of like, there's sort of a, some specific throw or catch that makes the trick interesting. But a lot of people do these nice tricks where I would say like the techniques are pretty simple, but it's all about, the movement and where you're doing all the throws and catches that makes the trick interesting. And that's just not something I'd explored a lot. And so I thought it would be fun to try to come up with a trick or two, sort of using that as a guideline. So I think I started out just, two throws normal, two throws overhead, and then kind of realized if I could change it up a little to get this nice box shape. So the goal is to kind of make as much as possible this big square shape that goes, sort of around my head. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then we got a couple just weird little, I wouldn't even call them tricks, just visuals. When I first edited this video, I made like a rough edit of the stuff I filmed, and there was like a 3-second section and a 10-second section which were blank, and I needed something for. And so, for 3 seconds, I didn't really know, like, coming up with a whole new trick was probably gonna, take longer than 3 seconds once it's in the video. So I was sort of inspired by a trick you'll see later, where I'm catching things in this sort of position where my fingers are interlocked, and I was thinking about that and what other ways you can use this sort of interlocked finger position to interact with the juggling balls. And so I came up with a couple ways just to hold some juggling balls using using these sort of interlocked fingers. So here's one, pretty simple. Here, just add a third ball by extending some fingers to give it a place to sit. And then this one was the one I came up with first, which was I thought was pretty interesting. Just like if you interlock them but give them some space, now you sort of have these 4 quadrants and just put a ball in each of them. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So this is another, this is sort of the other trick that's sort of only interesting because of where the throws and catches happen. Just a normal inverted box, but the idea was to just do it as high as I possibly could. So ideally, I'm catching and throwing the 2x with my arms like fully extended. And I thought it would be funny if you could, so basically what I started out with, where it's zoomed in enough where all you can see is the juggling, I don't know. I thought it would be funny. Yeah. Not much to say about that. Oh yeah. So this trick, basically exists because I found out it wasn't that hard for me to catch a ball on my elbow here. But one of the other things is sort of, I'd say a number of tricks in this video sort of try to use the idea of like doing 2 things at once, or like doing one technique which puts your body in a particular position, and then when you're in that position, you're sort of set up to do something else already. So it's sort of like one movement used in 2 different parts of the trick. And I'm sure people have probably been doing this and thinking about it for a long time, but I remember, I think first hearing it articulated in Wes's commentary in Gumball, and since then, I think that's been a really fruitful thing to think about, trying to come up with tricks, especially, and I think that usually makes the tricks more interesting if, it kind of feels all connected, more connected, instead of just like a sequence of disjointed, one-off tricks like, oh, there's a this throw and then a this throw, but if you have something like this that connects them, it sort of makes it a more logical progression than just like a random assortment. So here, yeah, catching here sets you perfectly up for this behind the neck throw. Yeah, and then so for this one, I had, between filming parts of this video, watching a lot of juggling, and was rewatching some of Gustav's videos. Here's an example, and he, for a while has been all about these elbow catches, that kind of thing. So I was just thinking about, how does that relate to the tricks that I'm doing, and it seemed pretty closely related to these elbow stalls that were in the last trick. And so it seemed like a nice idea to transition from one to the other, and then realize you can kind of keep going all the way down. So you get this nice progression vertically down of this one ball that just kind of, starts at the top, goes down one level, goes down one level, goes down one level. So starting with the elbow stall into the elbow catch, and then pinch it down there, and then catch it right there. And here's a variation on the trick from before with some more body throws, an extra back cross and a behind the neck throw. And then, yeah, so this next trick, again, sort of thinking about this idea of doing 2 things at once. Here, the idea is I'm throwing this multiplex, and the idea is that I want to claw catch the top ball, but as I go to do that, this bottom ball is like, if I didn't know it was there, it's sort of in the way, and on my way up to clock catch it, I hit it with the back of my hand. So watch it slow-mo, yeah. So, and then I come and slap it, send it back there. Again, on my way to clock catching it, it's there. And then another thing I like about it is that it really puts the juggling in a pretty different plane than it usually is. So if you follow the ball that gets slapped, it sort of it like goes up and then back and then forward, making this triangle all in sort of this plane, which is sort of an unusual plane for juggling to take place in. So I thought that was one sort of interesting thing about this trick. Yeah, so here, just a sort of a box variation, but the idea was sort of inspired by tricks like this. So where you can see in this trick, you know, the ball goes back and forth in this very pronounced V. And I like tricks that sort of have a very well-defined shape with it. And so I was just thinking, instead of kind of going back and forth in this V, if you could just add something to the top and have it go around and around in a triangle. And so that was the goal with that last trick. So yeah, just replay it. Again. So yeah, if you follow kind of this path, you can see the triangle that's formed. Yeah, and originally I had another variation of this idea that I filmed. So instead of a triangle, instead of adding sort of one line to cap off the top of that triangle, the idea was to sort of invert the V and make the top half of a diamond. And so the path that the ball, or that you would see in the pattern, was this diamond shape. And that, so that one I filmed, and it looks like this. So, you know, another variation on that shape idea. It's sort of, you know, it's quite similar to the triangle one already, and so I didn't really think including both made a lot of sense. And the triangle one, I thought was just because it was a simpler shape, it was just kind of clearer to see what exactly is going on, and so I just had to keep that one. If I wanted to keep this one, I probably would have refilmed it and made the diamond an even bigger sort of shape to help make it a little more clear. But I thought the triangle one was fine, so just kept that one. Right, so if we keep going here. Oh yeah, so right, so this is probably my favorite trick of the video, and it's also the one that I've thought about the least. It's when I mentioned earlier, there was like a 3-second section and a 10-second section that I needed to fill. This is what ended up filling the 10-second section. So I just needed a trick to make a trick that would fit here, and it just sort of came right away, and I filmed it right away, and within 10 minutes it was in the edit. But yeah, so I think the idea comes from, so later on in the video, there's a trick that I do that uses the same idea where these two balls kind of get split on your arm and end up in this position, you know, under the arm. For the other trick, I throw a multiplex to get there, and then there's another ball that goes into a stall, but I was just playing around with two and realized like if I just drop them on my arm, I can end up in that same position. They'll split by themselves. And that was the main idea. From there, it was just a matter of turning it into a trick. And so, you know, throwing one ball that sort of forces you to let go of these two made the most sense. And then you get this nice triangle shape, which is why, you know, in order to kind of see the whole triangle, I try to catch it with the ball outward. And then it was just a matter of, you know, how do I get from here to the same thing on the other side? And yeah, and I think, you know, although the original reason for catching it outward was so you could really see that triangle nicely, I think just the hand twisting in the trick adds a really nice visual. So I'm glad I happened to sort of think about that for a different reason. Just go back a second and see that again. So I was looking for this nice sort of triangle shape. And like I said, I really like tricks that sort of have a well-defined shape. So I was really happy with how this one turned out. So this trick is sort of all about this catch here. This is, I think inspired by the pose you make if you have to stretch or crack your knuckles or something. And I think it's just at some point, I thought, why aren't people using that pose in juggling? Especially it makes this nice surface to catch another ball on. It took a long time, like I've had this idea for a number of years, and it took a long time to sort of figure out how to use it in a pattern instead of just using it as a catch to end something, have it, be in the middle of something. And so eventually I sort of came up with this idea that's in the video, of taking the one on top and putting it on my head and then putting the others as stalls on my elbow. And yeah, if you want, what I found the most consistent way to make this catch is sort of when your fingers are interlocked to sort of extend your pinkies out a little and you get this nice triangle, and that's sort of where you should aim to catch the ball. That's at least what's worked best for me. Yeah. Yeah, so the idea behind this trick is sort of have a trick where the juggler is spinning, but all the juggling is still happening sort of in the same area. So even as the juggler spins, the juggling doesn't spin around with them, it sort of stays in place. And I think, I feel like this did a pretty good job of accomplishing that. Another quick trick with that same idea. Here's another of these doing two things at once trick. So, as you lift your foot to kick the ball, it's just inviting you to have an under the leg throw. So I'm sure probably tons of people have done this before, but I don't know, it seemed like a nice pattern. In many ways, that last trick sort of, to me, stands out among all the other tricks. I wonder if it does for anyone else watching. But it's sort of, I feel like most of my tricks are sort of centered around some core idea, and then the trick exists to display that idea, whether it's a throw or a particular catch or some sort of shape. If I was watching this trick in someone else's video, I might think like, why this trick? You know, like what was the process of coming up with this? Because it seems like just a bunch of, you know, body throws together in a sequence with no sort of like logical, you know, connection between them, sort of like a little contrived. And the reason it's like that in this video is I came up with it in a different way than most of my other tricks, which is this one was just something that I did naturally. Like, you know, you're just standing there thinking about something else while you're juggling, you know, you just kind of like let your hands do whatever. And I sort of realized that I kept doing this pattern and then went back and sort of figured out what exactly it was. And so interestingly, like this is a trick I never had to learn. It was just one my body learned how to do by itself. And then I later recognized that it might be sort of interesting. Even when I do it now, like I don't have to think about like, oh, then I have this throw and then this throw and then this throw. Like it just knows what to do by itself. I don't really know how, but it does. And so one thing I'm actually sort of, I think is, you know, a question I have is that like, is there something about this trick which makes that true? Like if someone else watched this video and learned this trick, would they agree and be like, yeah, that does seem like a really natural thing to do, and it you know, it comes easy to me once I've learned it, like, or would it feel like a random sequence of moves that you have to like, you know, think about which move comes next all the time, and is it just, you know, is it something about the trick that makes it natural, or is it something about me that makes it a natural trick for me? And I'm sure, you know, just by the types of tricks I practice that use these types of throws and stuff, you know, I'm sure it's at least partially, you know, about me. But I wonder to what extent it's also, is it a natural trick at all for other people? I don't know. I think that's an interesting question. If someone learns it, let me know. Yeah, and so sort of another reason, I mean, that's related, is that this trick stands out to me as sort of the value it provides, like what makes it a good trick to me, at least. I feel like when I'm evaluating juggling, there's sort of, you know, several different axes that I might evaluate a trick on. One of them is how impressive is the trick? You know, how hard is it to do? Another is how interesting is the trick? Like, is the, you know, what's the concept behind the trick, and is that interesting? And then the third would just be how aesthetically pleasing is the trick? You know, how does it look good? And I would say, in general, the tricks I like to make and put in my videos are ones that try to optimize the interesting axis. So I will, you know, generally trying to make tricks that are as interesting as possible, without too much care for the other ones. I don't generally aim to have them be hard or necessarily look good or anything like that. But this one, since I've done this for so long, I just thought I'd record it. And, you know, even though I've done this trick for probably at least 5 years, I've never, until I was editing this video, I've never seen what it looks like from an outside perspective, which is true for most of the tricks in my videos. But it, you know, it turned out that I just liked the way it looked. So this one, to me, among all the tricks in this video, like most of the other ones, I would say I put in this video and I think they're good tricks because I think they're interesting. This one, you know, again, to me, the sequence of throws and catches seems pretty arbitrary. And so the interesting, you know, I would say it's not very interesting. It's not particularly impressive or hard. And so to me, this is a good trick because it looks good. It's aesthetic. Yeah. Yeah, so this is probably one of the earlier tricks ideas that I had for this video. I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago or something. But it's directly inspired by another trick. So I remember I had just watched this video by Koda Ohashi, and the last trick in this video is this awesome multiplex trick. And so I think this idea of having the 3 in a line and throwing the outside 2 and having the middle one do something different, like, blew my mind. And I was immediately trying to think of other things that sort of captured this same technique. And so because of that, I came up with this trick. So, you can probably see that it's sort of a similar idea where they don't start out quite in a line, but you have the middle one of these 3 that does one thing while the other 2 go and do something else. And so, yeah. And then after this version of the trick, I go into a variation. So here, by adding a 4th ball, just try to make it a little bit more of a continuous pattern than sort of like the stop and start sort of pattern that the last one was. Just a little bit. Yeah, and so then this trick, the idea is to, you get this multiplex throw side by side, and the idea was sort of to swap the positions of them. So my original idea that I filmed first was to grab the outside ball and scoop it under and then throw it from the inside. But that didn't really have as much motion as I wanted, and when I watched it back, it just felt a little bit boring. And so I sort of realized if I went the other way, it would be a much more interesting trick. Grab the inside one and scoop it around and throw it from the outside. And that way, sort of as you come in and scoop it, and then keep going around, you sort of end up making a full circle with your hand that orbits this other ball. Doing the other version, you sort of only are really doing half of a circle. So I think this one is just a visually more interesting trick. Yeah, so this trick is one that I came up with just jamming at some point. But it wasn't till I was editing this video that I realized it sort of has a connection to another trick from an old video that I've done. So here's the other trick. You can see there's this sort of simultaneous throw that puts 3 in a line, and then I grab the middle one and throw it somewhere else. And so that's exactly the same technique that's used in this trick, just with other stuff happening around it. And so I think it's sort of interesting that, like I said, I came up with this trick just sort of by improvising, and I think I could do that because I'd already learned the other trick. So this motion of this throw and then catching the middle one and throwing it, that was sort of already baked into my muscle memory. And when I was improvising, I could just do it. Like, it's just something my brain saw in the moment and applied it to this other situation. So I sort of wonder, like, if I'd never done that first trick, if I would have ever stumbled upon this trick. This one, maybe not much of a trick, but part of a trick. Fun little catch. So again, this one was sort of inspired by the doing 2 things at once idea. So in particular, this was definitely inspired by a part of Gumball, Wes Bean's video. So the magenta part where they're sort of on under the leg throw and then an under the arm throw. Although this is a different way to do that than any of the ones in that video. I'll show you what I mean. Obviously, I'm not going to show a part of gumball since it's not free. But here's some similar tricks from the bonus video. But also, if you haven't seen gumball at this point, you know, what are you doing with your life? Go do that. Yeah, you can see this sort of under, the idea is an under the leg throw or catch, and then you go under the arm. And so I was trying to think of things using that same idea. But yeah, my under the arm here is just under this little bit of hand that's sticking out. But yeah. Yeah, it's a fun little 5-ball multiplex. This one, let's see, again, sort of started from just jamming, improvising. I sort of initially had a worse version of the trick, which was like a stack multiplex, then a split multiplex, and a 1. But it didn't really seem that interesting to me, and I wanted to see if there was some way I could make it symmetrical. And so it ended up the easiest way to do that was turn it into this sort of 4-4-1 multiplex trick, which I think is particularly fun to do because you have to move really fast to claw catch the bottom ball from the multiplex in order to make the next throw in time. So it's I don't know, it's a nice speedy pattern. Yeah, so here, this is like a cross column inverted box with the 2x behind the neck. So I've always really liked the normal inverted box behind the neck ever since I saw it in this video. So here, and so try to take that and add something a little more to it. I really wish you could, I could do this trick with the 2x as wide as it is in this video here. But I think it's going to be pretty hard because with the cross column version, you have to move your hand so fast from, wherever you're catching it behind your head to where you need to make the next throw. Here, in this one, you can kind of keep each hand in its own spot. So I think it would look great, but probably be quite hard. But if anyone can do it, let me know. I'd love to see what it looks like. Yeah. And last trick. So this multiplex with the 2 stalls is just one of my favorite tricks. Very satisfying to get. And then do it again. Yeah, in the middle. I don't know. Like the idea of this trick for me is like this sort of drop from the stall, so it goes outside the arm and also outside the leg, and then catch it underneath. Just like a fun little throw catch combo. Yeah, that's the video. I hope you liked it. If you actually listened to me ramble on about a 3-minute video for more than half an hour, I hope it was worth it. Hopefully it wasn't just sort of like hearing someone explain a joke, but if it was, oh well. Sorry. But yeah. The reason I'm doing this is to sort of, promote more discussion about juggling and, the thought process behind tricks and their creation, that kind of thing. So if anyone has, I don't know, any thoughts about anything that is in this video, I would definitely be interested to hear them. Yeah, feel free to reach out. Cool. Bye. So here's another trick I tried to do with the same wrist flick idea, but instead of throwing it outside, to kind of go under the arm and throw it inside. Yeah, I think you get some of that same effect where it sort of, the top balls sort of spread a little bit more than they would in a regular multiplex. But overall, at least in this trick, there's just not quite enough going on. It's a little boring. But probably there's going to be a way to use that throw in a way that makes it interesting. So just look out for that in a future video, perhaps.